What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another YouTube video. My name is Jack Linko, and we have a very special video for you guys today. So recently, we had government action taken regarding the content in one of my videos, specifically my first video ever on YouTube titled Don't Fall Back, in which I talk about how, we should keep the clocks sprung forward all year round. We have recently had government action taken regarding the content that I talked about in that video. So in this video, I'm going to update you guys on what's been going on with that and just go over again why we should keep the clock sprung forward and what that means for everybody. So let's get started. Now, the act that the government has put in place here is called the National Sunshine Protection Act. Seems very clear what it's going to do. It's going to protect the sunshine. So let's take a look at what exactly is going to happen here. Now, as I said, clocks are sprung forward from March 12th to November 5th. Let's go through some of the facts here and lay out exactly what's going on. So after November 5th, the clocks fall back. We fall back until November 12th. And that's the system that's been going on for about 100 years now. Since about 1918, this daylight savings and standard time has been kind of switching back and forth for about 100 years now. And, there's positives to it. There's negatives as well. And again, I'm making the case for daylight savings all year. So the main reason that this is so important is when the clocks are sprung forward, it allows there to be sunlight in the evening when basically everyone is awake, right? So the time at which we start to see issues is in the winter time, at least where I live. The sun will go down at about 5 o'clock p.m., even earlier than that. Even earlier, if you look at one of my things here, December 21st, Phoenixville fall back time. It's the place I live, is Phoenixville. The sun will set at 4:39 p.m. in where I live. That's extremely early. It's very early, and it's too early. That's the problem, is the sun goes down too early. It leads to seasonal depression, leads to just less light in the eyeballs, which leads to less light in the brain. Light goes through the optic nerve into the occipital lobe in the back of the brain, and just leads to brain fog and just seasonal depression, and just a number of issues for people. So if we actually have the clocks sprung forward an hour later, that allows the sun to go down at 5:39 instead of, you say, 4:39, which is that's a significant difference. Like, that's going to make a significant impact for mankind. That's the premise here. Just looking over my notes here, falling back to in the far right here, falling back to standard time increases seasonal depression, which I talked about, which I actually deal with some of that myself. That's why I'm so passionate about this here. It affects over 10 million Americans, and if we look at across the globe, probably affects hundreds of millions of people across the planet. So keeping the clock sprung forward is going to help that a lot. So that's why I'm so passionate that we make this happen, because we're almost there. Where there's legislation that's passed. I'm going to go through that in the next slide. Just stay with me here. We'll talk about the legislation first, I think, then jump back to these statistics here. Boom, boom. Okay, let's move my face out of the way. Thank you guys for staying with me here. All right, here we go. We have in the top corner here, Republican Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, who first proposed this bill for the National Sunshine Protection Act in 2018. 2 years later, I made my first YouTube video titled Don't Fall Back, November 1st, 2020, which was the day we happened to change the clocks back in 2020. Very fitting time that I dropped the video that time. And took them a couple years to go through it again, but maybe they watched my video, maybe they didn't watch my video. I don't really care regardless. Either way, in 2022, Rubio happened to reintroduce the bill into the Senate. Now, the interesting part about this is that this bill was passed unanimously by the Senate. It means every single senator in the Senate of the United States government of America voted in favor of this National Sunshine Protection Act. Which means every senator in the United States wanted to keep the clocks sprung forward, right? That's not an accident. That's not by mistake that happened. So I want to point that out there. That is 100 out of 100 senators that voted in favor of this act here. So we have a lot of momentum behind what we're doing here. And I'm actually surprised. When I posted my first video, I thought maybe not even in my lifetime would we see the clocks sprung forward all year. I thought maybe never, maybe not in my lifetime. So the fact that this happened is a big step. This is a big deal here. So thank you, Senator Rubio, for introducing that. Continuing down here, we have that the House never voted on this because former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi never brought this to a vote, right? She never brought it to a vote, which is very I guess concerning, considering that you have a Senate here in the United States government that unanimously passed a bill, and you're not going to call it for vote. It's just kind of a bit disappointing, to be honest. But I could see if a bill had 51 votes, 52, 53. You're like, we may not get the support. You had 100 out of 100 senators in favor of it, and you didn't bring it to vote. It's kind of just disappointing. But good news is that we have a new Speaker of the House now. Republican Mike Johnson, current Speaker of the House. It seems like the Republicans are behind this more. Either way, I feel like it's not a partisan issue. It's for the betterment of everybody. So that's the current timeline we have here. I also believe that as of March 2nd, 2023 here, that Senator Rubio also he reintroduced the bill into the Senate. So awesome. Looking forward to see. Maybe now's the time. They got a Republican Speaker of the House, a new Speaker of the House, same party as Rubio here. Maybe this is the time that we can finally get the government to get this through. Now, before we jump into the counter arguments here, actually, you know what? I'm gonna jump into the counter arguments here to see so we can just get moving right away. So the main thing I hear when I hear people talk against the springing forward of the clocks is, what about the farmers? Doesn't it affect the farmers that standard time helps the farmers is the premise here. I'm here to show you that claim is outdated and that the farmers are going to be just fine. So let's go through it. In 1918, as you can see here, farmers protested the National Daylight Savings Time. That's when Daylight Savings Time was first introduced, was 1918. That was 105 years ago. That was over 100 years ago. The point here is that farming technology has become exponentially more efficient today than 100 years ago. Exponentially more efficient. Just to outline how much better it's gotten, there's this statistic here. In 2021, United States exported $18.7 billion of corn to other countries. $18.7 billion. Not million, not 100,000, $1 billion of corn. And that's exported. That's not even in the United States, man. That's exported. That's to other countries. You mean to tell me that we need the clocks to turn back in the fall for the farmers, bro? I'm not buying it, man. I have a really hard time buying that. I just don't buy it. There's no way. So I do understand some of the arguments, and I have a perfect counter for it. Perfect counter. The other main thing I hear about with the farmer thing is it affects the cows and the animals. Yeah, I hear about the dairy cows. It affects the cows. The thing that happens is when we change the clocks, that disrupts the cycle of the animals. My point here is, if we keep the clocks sprung forward all year and just keep that, we don't disrupt the animals because we keep it one time. We can keep daylight savings and help the animals at the same time. So that's my point here on the farmer argument. Not buying it. I'm not buying the whole, farmers need it. No, you keep the clocks one time, farmers gonna be okay. Okay? That's the farmer argument. The next argument against daylight savings time is the day after argument. The day after. Now, on the surface level, I will give credit. This sounds pretty credible, but when you look a little bit deeper into it, it's a little bit shaky. It's a little bit shaky, okay? And we're going to talk about it. So, what happens on March 5th, the day after we turn the clocks forward? There's an increase in car crashes, an increase in heart attacks in the United States to a statistically significant degree. And that makes people wondering, oh, well, maybe we should just keep the clock standard time, because if we spring it forward, then there's going to be car crashes and heart attacks, blah blah blah, all this shit. The reason for that isn't because the clocks are sprung forward, or it's not because it's from 8 a.m. to whenever the sun goes down. It's because you lost an hour of sleep. So you lost an hour of sleep. That's the problem. That's why there's an increase in car crashes, increase in heart attacks, is that lost hour of sleep. So the solution to accommodate for this is, on the day that the clocks are going to be sprung forward, or that night really, go to bed an hour early. Just go to bed an hour earlier, right? That solves the problem. The other thing that solves the problem is, when we keep this sprung forward all year, we only have to have this day one more time, and we never have to have it again. Never have to have it again. Because once the clocks are sprung forward, we keep it that way. We never have to have this jump from losing the hour of sleep, because the sleep cycle will just catch up. It's just going to catch up. You don't have to deal with that day any longer. So it solves the problem, right? So again, the day after argument, I understand that these negative things happen, and I don't want them to happen. But if we just set the clocks forward, only have this day, only have to have it one more time, we never have to have that day again, and everybody can have a more aligned circadian rhythm. So that's the day after argument. The last major argument that I hear against daylight savings time is the bus stop argument. The bus stop one. This one's not too difficult to go against. So let's talk about this one here. So when we have the clock sprung forward, that will lead to the sun rising an hour later in the morning, and it falls an hour later in the afternoon. The one problem with that is that the bus stop is going to be darker in the morning for children, and that's not good. That's not what we want. However, there are solutions we can do to combat this where it's still worth it to keep the clock sprung forward. It's still worth it. So what we have here is later school start times. That's a big fix, right? I know the high school I actually went to, they just changed the start time from 7:25 to 8 a.m. Good, very good deal. I was glad to hear that. It's a very good thing. Another thing we can do here, install lights on street corners, right? Because we don't want our kids in the dark. If you install lights on street corners, we can do stuff like that. And the third one, here's my favorite, is accompany your children at the bus stop, right? That's probably the most effective way to combat this, is help the kid feel safe, right? So that's the bus stop argument right there. Going back to the, sorry guys, we had a thing come up in the house, but I'm back to filming here. Let's get back into it. Let's get right back into things here. Okay, all right. Back to here. Let's go over. Scrolling over. Oh, sorry, we went through all this. So the bus stop argument. The bus stop, right? There's going to be that period at the bus stop where it's going to be more difficult. But as I'm explaining, there's things we can do to combat that. And the main point I'll get into once I share the stuff on the circadian rhythms is this stuff is worth it. It's well worth that little sacrifice we make in the morning, is very much worth the payoff that we get in the afternoon. Now let's take a look at the science behind that, okay? So here we have the circadian clock of the human being, the circadian clock. This is the natural rhythm that our bodies, brains, minds fall into when we're in alignment with nature, when we're in alignment. You know, sometimes we're out of balance, but when we're in alignment though, this is what this looks like is right here. So take a look at the graph here. We have high alertness at 10 a.m. We have, now let's start with 7:30. We have the melatonin secretion stopping at 7:30 a.m. So again, you know, we don't really need to get up much before 7:30 a.m. because naturally our body's not really going to stop producing melatonin until 7:30. So that's why having the sun come up at like, you know, 5:30 a.m. is not really that relevant for most people. If I show you on this slide, nope, the other slide, my fault. Wait, I had that. Yeah, this slide here. Sorry. We have in the bottom left-hand corner, the bottom left-hand corner here, average American wakes up at 7 a.m. 7 a.m. there, and the average bedtime is 11 p.m. That's the average person. That's the everyday 9 to 5 hardworking person right there. Okay, 7 to 11. So if we're doing this right, we want the sun to come up at about 7 in the morning on average, right? That's what, remember, on average. And we want the sun to fall about, you know, a little bit before 11 p.m., probably about, let's say, 9 p.m., right? 9 p.m. If we can have 7 to 9 p.m. sunlight, or there's an average of 12 hours of sunlight per day because, you know, 12 hours of sun, 12 hours of darkness, that adds to 24 hours of sunlight per day. We want that, you know, probably in the middle, about 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. is about the mid-range of when we want the sun to come up. The problem here is that with standard time, that does not happen even close, not even close. When it's sprung forward time, we are closer to that, you know, 7 to 8 a.m. sunrise and about 7 to 8 p.m. sunset. We're closer to that with daylight savings time, right? Daylight savings time is more aligned with the circadian rhythm, okay? That is the main point. You'll see articles that say otherwise. I'm telling you right now, this standard or daylight savings time is the correct way to go about things. So that's the main point here. Just adding on to these circadian rhythms here, let's take a look at another example from right where I live in the heart of Pennsylvania. On the bottom right-hand corner here, on the, what's it called? The summer solstice, June 21st, the highest point of the sun, we have a sunrise time of 5:34 in the morning, 5:34 a.m., and a sunset of 8:34 p.m. Most people aren't up till 7 a.m. So why is the sun rising at 5:34, an hour and a half before most people even wake up? Makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. About, I gotta say, 80% of the population isn't up yet. It's like, why do we have the sun that far in the morning? That's the sprung forward time. Could you imagine if we fell back all year? Could you imagine if it was standard time all year round? We'd have a 4:34 sunrise. Most people aren't up for another 2.5 hours. That's what I'm saying. This falling back stuff is just too far off the natural rhythm that it has to be sprung forward all year. It's the best way to do it, in my opinion. So I could make the case for an additional hour sprung forward to the sprung forward time, right? Imagine we took June 21st here, made that 6:34 a.m., 9:34 p.m., right? 6:30 to 9:30. That fits a lot better with the circadian rhythm here, doesn't it? 6:30 a.m., sharpest blood pressure rise. 9:30 p.m., melatonin has started to produce when the sun goes down. Makes perfect sense, right? But you're talking 5:34 sunrise, man. It just doesn't make as much sense to me, man. It's got to be daylight savings all year. So I feel like I've covered most of what I need to cover in this video here. Again, thank you guys for watching the video. I take time to do these PowerPoints, do the research, and every one of you that, subscribes to the channel, likes the video, comments on the video, even likes a comment on the video, everything adds up to make all of this more likely to happen, right? Everything is connected. Everything's connected. So it's not by accident that 100 out of 100 senators are in favor of daylight savings all year round. It's not by accident that Marco Rubio continues to put this into the Senate despite people being lazy about it, people disagreeing with it perhaps. I understand why they disagree, but when you do the research, you think for yourself, the answers become pretty clear. So hopefully you guys agree with me. Even if you don't, thank you for watching this far, and have a great rest of your day or evening, and stay tuned for more videos.